How come you feel like you're doing everything right when it comes to food, and yet you are still dragging your feet at 2, 3 p.m., just waiting for the day to get over or waiting for the next time you could eat a snack? We are talking about that today because how you're eating, what you're eating, and even when you're eating could be costing you more than you think. It could be negatively impacting your mental health, your relationships, and your performance at work. Because what nobody's talking about is what we eat for lunch might actually be impacting our energy levels, our mood, and our overall emotional well being more than our jam packed schedule is. See, I'm a dietitian who speaks to corporate teams for a living, and today I am going to be sharing nutrition strategies that event planners will pay thousands for to bring to their employees, and I'm going to give it to you for free. And here's what I'm not going to give you. I'm not going to tell you to follow some strict meal prepping routine that requires you to be in the kitchen 7 hours a week. I'm not going to even tell you to have more discipline or shake my finger at you for having cravings for sugar. I'm just going to be sharing the stuff that actually works for high performers, busy professionals, even stay-at-home moms who have a lot going on, because I know your schedule is already maxed out and adding more to that already full plate just won't work. And if you are an HR leader or an event planner who's listening to this, be sure to stick around because I'm going to share at the end how you can bring more of this information to your team, specifically tailored to your goals and ideal outcomes. Now, here's the thing about me that you should know. I've been a registered dietitian in private practice for almost 9 years now, which is crazy to think about. We have an in-person practice called Nutrition Awareness in Orlando. And one of the beautiful gifts that this career has given me is a really intimate understanding of how people eat, what drives their decision making. Because I don't just give people meal plans, I ask them dozens of questions at every single session to better understand what they struggle with. And then together we create action plans to help them get to their goals. And nutrition is constantly evolving. I mean, the recommendations I was giving 3 years ago don't always apply to today, because 3 years ago, the hot thing was keto and intermittent fasting. And now it is using GLP-1s to help facilitate weight loss or even overcome things like insulin resistance, PCOS, whatever else may be triggering some internal inflammation, which I could do a whole podcast about that because I have a lot of opinions about the use and misuse of GLP-1s, but we'll just leave that for a future episode. Today, we're really going to be talking about how nutrition impacts burnout, or I should say lack of nutrition impacts burnout. Because when people were doing all of these fad diets, some trends were coming up, and now I'm seeing them resurfacing in a different way with new trendy and wellness habits. So let's think about some of the biggest wellness trends that are happening that a lot of people who tend to be like overachievers, people who want to do it all, maybe you could call yourself high functioning, what these types of people are gravitating towards. Because what I find high performers want to do is they want to do more. They want to add goals. They want to add restrictions. They want to create a game plan around something that adds more to their plate because that's just what they're used to doing, right? It really works with work. Like, what can I say yes to? What can I take on? What kind of responsibilities or skills can I learn to grow? And I think that mindset's amazing up to a certain point. And then when it comes to food, there can be some things that we start doing or restricting that actually are self-sabotage. And one of the biggest ones that's been around forever, but even more so now, is actually skipping meals. Skipping meals consistently. Okay, I should say consistently because there's always going to be a day where we are overwhelmingly busy, we're late to work, the kids are sick, and so we had to try to arrange childcare so we could still show up to a meeting. Like, there will be exceptions. When I say skipping meals consistently, I mean most days of the week you don't have anything to eat before 11 a.m. Or lunch gets pushed back to 3 p.m. even though you wanted to eat at 12 and you felt hungry at 12. And it happens over and over and over again. And I find that a lot of people are doing this because of one of three reasons. One is they genuinely forget to eat. They're not thinking about food. They're thinking about everything external. These people tend to live in their heads and not so much in their bodies. They're thinking about their schedule. They're thinking about their to-do list. They're thinking about all of the things that have to get done outside of them and not so much about what needs to be taken care of inside of them. The other group of people are people who are pursuing weight loss actively. Now, these people are probably in their brains and their bodies because they'll feel hunger or they'll feel off, but they're just using discipline or plan or medication to push through hunger because they believe that eating less throughout the day yields weight loss, which isn't entirely true. It's just usually their strategy is wrong, where they're restricting all day and then overeating at night, and it becomes this vicious cycle. So weight loss is the other thing. And third is productivity. People aren't eating because they feel like food slows them down, whether it slows them down metabolically, like they eat something and they feel too full and tired, or they feel like stopping to eat just gets in the way of a project or whatever thing that they're working on. And these people also tend to just live in their head. And I don't want you to not live in your head because living in our head is great, but I want you to be able to communicate with your body. Your head and body need to communicate. Just like the people who are pursuing weight loss often will feel hungry when they skip meals, they just choose to listen to some kind of external voice instead of their bodies. In fact, I have a client like this. She's on a GLP-1 medication right now. And she's really excited because for the first time in her life, like she's not thinking about food constantly. It's her. I didn't know her before she went on a GLP-1. I really think there were things we could have worked on to maybe get her on a lower dose of a GLP-1 or not even use one at all. But that's just where she is in her journey right now. And she just loves not eating because she can. And the problem is she still is getting hunger cues. And I shouldn't say that's the problem. The problem is her reaction. Is she's like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to eat. Like I just want to lose this weight. This GLP-1 helps me have more resistance to eating. And so she will wake up, drink some water, maybe have a cup of coffee, and then hit the day. And she just doesn't eat until 3 p.m. The problem is GLP-1s aren't just like this magical thing that makes you feel amazing no matter what. Because even though she's not really craving food and she's not really hungry, two terrible things have started to happen, okay? First off, she is an irritable bitch. And those are her words, not mine. She is snapping at people. She feels just like a lack of, I don't know, zest for life and the people around her. She used to just feel more steady. Now she's just feeling cranky. But she's losing weight. And so she's like, well, this is just part of the process. And that's not true. See, food is fuel for our brains and bodies, and it also impacts our ability to show up stable. So two things happen when we don't eat food. We have a drop in blood sugar because food is energy and blood sugars are our barometers for energy. So she doesn't eat all day. Somewhere in the afternoon when things start to slow down and she's been using her brain, she's been using her body just to function, she will start to get these like irritable hypoglycemic symptoms. Now, without the GLP-1, before she would get hunger pains, like she would feel an empty pit in her stomach, she would get cravings for sugar. Those are shut off, or they're at least not as intense as they used to be. But all the other symptoms of low blood sugar are still there. Brain fog, irritability, crankiness, hangriness without the hunger, lack of patience. Like, do you remember? I mean, we've all felt hangry before. Have you ever felt hangry like on your commute home or like when you're trying to get from point A to point B? Like everyone's in your way, you can't get there fast enough, you are just mean. And I feel like this affects women more than men, maybe from some like hormonal standpoint, but that's just what I see anecdotally. And so finally at 3, she'll eat, but she's not even making that healthy choices because she's not so concerned about the nutritional content. She's more concerned about getting in protein as quickly as possible and not eating a lot so that she continues to lose weight. So she is relying on a lot of like protein type foods, not like natural proteins. I'm talking protein bars, I'm talking protein shakes. In fact, I'll talk about those a little bit later. And they're not really giving her brain and body a lot of fuel from glucose to help her feel more steady. So with her, one of the things that we're working on is actually being proactive with her nutrition. And whether you're on a GLP-1 or not, being proactive with how and what you eat is so crucial. Because if we let ourselves get to the point of no return where our blood sugar crashes, we're not going to make great choices, and we're not going to be able to show up as our best selves. As cheesy as that sounds, we don't feel healthy, we don't feel stable, we don't feel patient, we don't feel productive, we don't feel motivated. So then if we don't show up as our best selves, then we can't continue to make our dreams come true. And again, I know it sounds so cheesy, but that's just how I feel, because I've been there before, where I just felt so crappy by 3 or 4 p.m. because I didn't take care of myself. The whole rest of the day is a wash. I don't have the energy to do all the things I want to do, like organize my house, work out, make a home cooked dinner, take a walk with my family. Because when you're reactive with nutrition instead of proactive, then you're just grabbing whatever quick and convenient. You're probably going to feel tired. You're just kind of slugging through the day's responsibilities without having a pep in your step. And I think a lot of people blame this on age, or they blame it on life stress, and they call it burnout. And maybe it is burnout. Maybe you are doing too much. Maybe you do have too much responsibility on your plate. But what about us who can't say no to more things? What about us who have fixed responsibilities and work obligations and family, and none of that's going away anytime soon? We have to make sure that we are taking care of our bodies and we are fueling properly so that we can have the capacity to take all of those things on. So here's what you'll do. Within the first 3 hours of waking, eat whole foods that have a combination of both fiber and protein. And I have a framework that I teach in my keynotes that goes a little bit more in depth with this. But protein and fiber is a really great start, and it's a magical combination that will keep you full and stable for longer. So you can think about Greek yogurt, which would be your protein, with a big old piece of fruit that gets you fiber. Or maybe you have leftover sweet potato from the night before and you scramble that in your eggs or egg whites. The complex carb, that glucose that fuels your brain and body, is coming from the sweet potato. It's really slow to break down and digest, so it gives you nice, steady energy. And then you pair it with that protein, those eggs, that Greek yogurt, that really anchors the meal. It keeps you full. And you know a meal is working for you if it keeps you full for 3 to 6 hours. So if you're on a GLP-1, you'll probably feel fuller for longer. If you're not on a GLP-1, it really just depends on your portion and your activity levels. So then you would want to make sure that you are setting reminders to check in with your hunger and be proactive with your fuel every 3 to 6 hours. So if you wake up at 7 and you eat breakfast at the office around 9, by noon, you need to start thinking, when do I have an opportunity to eat next? Do I need a snack? Do I need a meal? Do I need to set a timer to check back in an hour because it's not a good time right now, or I'm still full? If you are going over 6 hours without eating, and you're an active person, or you have a high stress job that requires a lot of cognitive load, I would really, 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 really encourage you to stop that habit and give your brain and body a little dose of real fuel from protein and fiber, real foods, nothing with added sugar, not a lot of processed junk food, real whole foods. And this is something I talk about in my keynotes. I give examples. I always give all of my keynote talks a supplemental PDF that has lists of foods and snack ideas and all these different things that work for stay-at-home moms and busy professionals and people who travel, just real life things that actually work. So your step 1 to really make sure that you are preventing burnout with better nutrition is to not skip meals. Another thing that I think is really causing burnout, which might be surprising to some people, is this nationwide, even like global wide, but especially nationwide obsession with caffeine. Okay, having 1 or 2 cups of coffee in the morning is not a big deal. But these energy drinks and this coffee culture, and of course, all the stuff that they're adding to coffee, and especially people who work past dinner time, they're drinking coffee late into the afternoon, sometimes after dinner. There can be real consequences to this. And let me be very clear. And this is coming from a lady who is in her 3rd trimester of pregnancy and still drinking coffee. I will never tell you to let go of caffeine unless you want to, because I would be a hypocrite. And I will also tell you that many of you are drinking way too much. Like I have this client, we're going to call him Sam. Okay. I love this guy. When I first met him, I was flabbergasted during our diet recall about how much coffee he drank in a day. I mean, it had to be at least a whole pot of coffee. And it had just crept up over time because for him, he was like, well, I don't really like eating in the morning and coffee makes me not think about food. I was like, oh, that's true, because coffee and caffeine is often an appetite suppressant. So what started as 2 cups of coffee in the morning turned into 3, and he had these little rituals. And it's almost like these coffee goalposts throughout the day that gave him something to look forward to. So it was like coffee when he woke up, coffee on his commute. Then he'd get to the office and he'd make a coffee before his 10 o'clock meeting. And then he'd drink this coffee during his 10 o'clock meeting. After lunch, he would want to suppress his sweet tooth with a coffee. And it just went on and on and on, but he did not feel great. First of all, he had tummy issues. He was kind of sensitive to all this coffee, so I'll let your imagination take that one. But two is he was feeling like sleepy. And he was like, I think I just built a tolerance to caffeine. And I was like, yeah, you nailed it. But here's something that people don't realize about caffeine is they think caffeine gives them energy. They're like, oh, this is like this magical energy potion. I drink this Alani Nu, I drink this Celsius, I drink this latte, and I get energy. Well, what's really happening is that your body creates a hormone that makes you feel sleepy, and it's called adenosine. And in your brain, you've got these receptors that accept adenosine, and then you feel tired. What caffeine does is it creates this gate. It blocks the receptors. So all of a sudden, this sleepy hormone that might be building up in your brain and body because you didn't sleep well or eat well or sleep enough, it just gets blocked. And so it builds up, but you don't feel tired. The thing is, caffeine has a half-life. It doesn't last forever. It wears off. And so when it wears off, people typically get flooded with a feeling of exhaustion or sleepiness. And they either respond in one of 3 ways. More caffeine, which repeats the cycle. Sugar, usually craving refined carbohydrates to give them a boost of energy because that's what those do. They give you a quick spike and then crash in energy. Or they take a nap. And the reality is that's just not possible for so many of us. A nap probably would be the most healthy option of those 3. But if it gets in the way of you going to the gym after work or productivity at work, if you work for yourself and you need to get stuff done before your kids get home or before you have evening obligations, not always the best call. So here's what we do instead. I would really start to wean off coffee if you find that you are relying on caffeine afternoon. I don't care what time you go to bed. If you are drinking too much coffee consistently afternoon, that tells me that there's probably some kind of dependence on there. And this goes for energy drinks. Sometimes I see young people at the gym in the evening drinking an energy drink while they work out. And I'm just like, that is just terrible. And I would put money that so many of them are doing it on an empty stomach too, which personally to me sounds like chugging gasoline and just a nightmare situation. But really consuming caffeine after noon, or I'll just say even 1 p.m., typically signals to me that there's some kind of energy imbalance. 2, I would also make sure that the caffeine you're drinking doesn't have any added sugar to it. And really that includes oat milk, okay? Oat milk is just oats without the fiber, and so it's pure glucose in liquid form, which can cause a spike in blood sugar and crash. When I was wearing a continuous glucose monitor, oat milk did not do well in my body personally, and from what I've learned from other clients and their CGMs, really not the best, okay? So I would stick to milk that either has some kind of protein or fat content, like cow's milk or soy milk, or something that's like virtually water, like almond milk. And then I would start to pay attention to how you're eating. If we are just relying on caffeine to get us through the morning, we are blocking that sleepy hormone without putting actual fuel or food in our body, because our brain, our body cells run on food, not caffeine, not discipline, grit, willpower. All those things are great and they make a big difference, but utilize that discipline in the morning to say, okay, I know I'm busy and I'm going to grab something quick and healthy. I know that I have a lot going on and my body still deserves fuel, no matter your weight loss goal and no matter your schedule. Because here's the secret with weight loss, on a GLP-1 or not, front loading your nutrition, putting fuel in the first 2/3 of your waking hours yields way better results, because then at the end of the day, you're not relying on willpower, which is very finite. You're being proactive instead of reactive. You're not going to have extreme cravings for junk food or the urge to skip out on your responsibilities because you've put real energy in your body. And when you have energy, you have the secret sauce. Energy is like the foundation of everything. And here's what's really cool. Let's say that you have the energy because you've been fueling, like you just had breakfast and lunch. And then at 3 p.m., maybe you have a snack, maybe you need it, maybe you don't. Now you have the energy to go take a walk. And on that walk, you get inspiration. Because I don't know about you, but I get like my best ideas on walks, especially outside. And you get inspiration for a new idea, whether it's related to your business, to your family, to your house, to something creative. Like you get this like idea. And can you just tell me like the energy you get from like a new fresh idea, that inspirational energy? Gosh, like I love that. There's nothing like that. So by energizing your body with food, you can actually spark energy from your brain, from new ideas, from inspiration. And then you get home from that walk and then you're excited to like do stuff again. You're like, oh my gosh, like yeah, let's get home. Let's like do this thing. Let's create a plan. Let's get a team together. Let's take action. And then guess what? You take action on an idea that gives you energy, and what do you get? More energy. It's this beautiful life cycle. But if we are just living on caffeine, or even worse, nothing at all, we burn out halfway through the day. And then the rest of our day and the half of our lives kind of suck. Like, doesn't it kind of suck to like come home and like have this plan to do something, but you're too tired and you're like, I'm just gonna scroll TikTok. Lame. There's so much more to life than that. And it starts with how and what we eat. Now, there's something else that I think is causing a lot of like really high performers, overachievers, if you will, to feel poopy. And here's what it is. It's this whole messaging on social media about protein. Everybody thinks that we need at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And let's put this into context, okay? That's not entirely wrong for some people. But oftentimes when I see people sharing that this worked for them, they're people who weigh somewhere between 120 and 140 pounds, or they're bodybuilders. Now, a lot of people who are really paying attention to this protein goal typically have some kind of aesthetic goal in mind. They're like, I want to lose weight and maintain muscle. I want to build muscle. And they might be weighing more than they would like to weigh at the time. And they're like, okay, well, if I weigh 170 now, that means I need 170 grams of protein. No, here's the problem with that. There's a lot of problems with this. Number one, we typically base protein goals on a couple things. If you have a weight loss or fat loss goal in mind, we are going to base it on your adjusted ideal body weight. So your dietitian is going to have a formula for that. But if you don't know your actual ideal body weight, you're not working with a dietitian, you would just take your goal weight, okay? So let's say that you weigh 200 pounds and you'd like to weigh 150 pounds. We still don't jump to 1 gram per pound of body weight because 150 grams of protein per day is a lot. It's a lot of protein. And what happens when we chase this high protein number? Well, first of all, we probably are going to rely on a lot of protein supplements. We're going to rely on Built bars and Quest bars and protein drinks, and all of that stuff is okay in moderation, but I find they typically are nutritionally incomplete. They are full of chemicals that cause a lot of tummy troubles, like sugar alcohols, artificial sugars, gums, fibers that aren't coming from the best whole food sources, and that can just make you feel icky. Also, they typically don't have any kind of complex carbs with them, which we know gives our body fuel and it gives us energy. So those things once in a while are not a big deal, but they don't come packaged with a lot of vitamins, nutrients. They typically come packaged with a lot of junk. Two, when we're chasing this high protein goal, then we don't have a lot of room in our stomach for other nutrients that aid in weight loss and performance, energy, and blood sugar stabilization, aka complex carbs and healthy fats. So if we are eating 150 grams of protein, we might have a lot of trouble eating our 24 grams of recommended amount of fiber for women in a day, and for men it's 36 grams of fiber in a day. You might be falling short by over 50% because I look at a lot of diet recalls and I tell you a lot of people are falling way too short on fiber. And if you pair this with a GLP-1, where everyone's telling you that you need to be eating like copious amounts of protein or you're gonna lose all your muscle tissue, you might not be eating any fiber. And fiber has long-term health benefits that cannot be ignored. One of the big things it does is it helps promote a healthy gut microbiome. which we know is linked to brain health, longevity, and of course, digestion. So if you're feeling constipated or bloated, really look at your fiber intake and then look at your protein intake. So how much protein should you really be eating? I typically have everyone take their goal weight in kilograms, okay? Because I just use the formula in kilograms. That's where it shows up in a lot of the literature. So you would divide your weight by 2.2, and then we would look at your goals. If it's to maintain muscle tissue, and you don't really care about building muscle tissue, you would multiply that by 1.2. So your goal weight in kilograms by 1.2 is that goal weight for maintaining. If you are closer on the end of wanting to build muscle tissue, or maybe you are at a weight loss goal and you do feel better eating more protein, you would multiply that by 1.7, 1.8 at the absolute most. I would never have anyone do more than 1.8 grams per kilogram of their goal weight of protein, because I typically see a lot of people do exactly what I described. So let's say that your goal weight is 150 pounds. In kilograms, that's 68 kilograms. You have a goal of wanting to build muscle tissue, so we're going to multiply that by 1.7. That means you need about 116 grams of protein per day. Way more doable, and I promise effective, and it leaves room in your diet for other nutrition. So what else do we do? Let's say that you start tracking your food on Macro Factor or Chronometer or MyFitnessPal or your AI chatbot of choice, and you find that you're not even getting 116 grams of protein. And you're like, oh, like a protein shake or a protein bar could help me. Okay, sure. Let's just be really, really choosy about exactly what kind of protein supplements we're using. In my performance guides that I give all of my keynote audiences, I link examples to brands that are dietitian approved, but some of my favorite bars are going to be ones that are made from whole foods, have less than 5 grams of added sugar, and typically have at least 2 to 3 grams of fiber. RX bars, Zing bars, Aloha bars, all those are really, really great brands. But I really encourage people to eat more of nature's protein, like meat, eggs, beans, nuts, seeds, because these come packed with lots of other nutrients that many Americans are deficient in. In fact, I recently learned that between 40 and 60% of American girls in their adolescent years have an iron deficiency. Okay, can you imagine an iron deficiency, how that's impacting a growing body? And if that's just happening to adolescent girls, and I see that all the time in practice, it's definitely affecting adults, but definitely women who menstruate, and even more so women who are very, very active. Because if you are running, for instance, or you are jumping, that foot strike, when it hits the ground, actually breaks down red blood cells, which can lead to more of a depletion in your iron. So nature's iron, especially animal products, if you choose to eat that, because it has heme iron, it's just better absorbed. But even plant-based proteins are going to have fiber and B vitamins or antioxidants. All of these things to not only help promote just a healthier gut microbiome, but clearer thoughts, less brain fog, a decrease in inflammation, all the magical things that these medications that you inject yourself with or take are claiming to do. Not even just medications, but supplements. It really is the power of whole foods. And I know we could talk about the quality of food and access to whole food. Those are definitely issues here in America. And we can still do our best to eat as many whole foods as possible. And that's a great, great start. So here's what I want you to take away from all 3 of these main points about not skipping meals, about how being mindful of caffeine intake can impact you, as well as all of this dependence on protein supplements to reach these insane goals, is that none of the people I talked about, or you even, or me, because I've made all of these mix, none of these choices mean that we are failing, right? Like if you are listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I skip meals and I eat Quest bars for breakfast and lunch and I drink 4 pots of coffee in a week, like you're not failing. And if you're feeling like crap, it might just be because you're under fueling. In fact, I really think that's the case for a lot of people who at least tend to gravitate towards me as their dietitian, or definitely the people I speak to in corporate talks, because a lot of them are really disciplined and they are high achievers and they're professionals and they do all these things, and it's just not because they lack discipline. I think the problem is we immediately turn to blaming our schedules or stress or our lack of self-control, when really our bodies have just been sending us signals that we either have been ignoring or haven't been aware of, and they're waiting for us to feed them. So if this resonated with you, I want you to walk away with something today, which is that you're not broken and you're not lazy and you're not just cursed with being tired and burnt out for the rest of your professional career. You might just need to re-examine how you fuel, either how much you fuel, when you fuel, or how you fuel. And the energy that you are lacking at 2 p.m., it's probably not hiding in another energy drink or cup of coffee, or even this like elaborate morning routine that requires you to go at 5 a.m. and buy a sauna or get a membership to some kind of wellnessy place that takes 2 more hours out of your day. It might just be hiding in what you eat and when you eat it. So you can start with just one thing, right? Start with eating protein and fiber at the beginning of your day, definitely before noon, but ideally in the first 2 to 3 hours of eating. Get it from Whole Foods. That's it. Just start there. Eggs and fruit, Greek yogurt with leftover sweet potato, an RX bar with your coffee, right? And if this hit home for you, I would love for you to share this episode with someone on your team who needs to hear it, because that's the best way to support this message and support your team and support your joined mission. And if you're an HR leader, a team manager, or an event planner who wants to bring this conversation to your people, I do this for a living for corporate teams. And the link to work with me is in my show notes. You can fill out a contact form on my website or email the email address linked below. Guys, I hope you found this episode interesting. And I'm Kait, your dietitian who understands what it's like to have a full plate. And I want you to feel your best without having to say no to all the things you want to do in this life. Okay, I will see you on the next episode.